Leute, ich kann das Spiel nie wieder mit normalen Augen sehen, glaube ich. Wunderschönen guten Tag zu dieser neuen Reaction. Hat ein bisschen länger gedauert, weil ich jetzt eine Weile unterwegs war, aber wir starten gleich mal mit einem interessanten Video rein. Ich muss erstmal wieder ins Reden kommen, denn wir gucken ein Video, warum die Mario Kart 64 Computergegner so schnell sind. Und das Ding ist, ich habe jetzt mal automatisch erzeugte Untertitel eingestellt. Mal sehen, wie das funktioniert. Ihr könnt ja gerne mal eure Meinung dann unten da lassen. Der Chat natürlich hier auch. Und wir gucken einfach mal rein, was uns jetzt erwarten wird. Mario Kart 64, persönlich eins meiner Lieblings-Mario Karts oder mein Lieblings-Mario Kart. Aber vielleicht sehe ich das nach dem Video ja anders. Das stammt nämlich von dem Kanal Ubisoft, ist mittlerweile 9 Monate alt. Aber ja, schauen wir einfach mal rein, würde ich sagen. Würde ich sagen.
Mario Kart 64 do not play fair. In fact, they cheat so hard that you'd swear someone
Geht ja schon gut los. What the fuck?
edited their files and forgot to disable them. From
Okay.
speed boosts to driving through walls and ignoring items, they do everything, including a CPU-only skip.
Ich dachte immer, die werden einfach nur schneller. Rubberband halt, aber das sieht total bescheißt. Naja, gucken wir mal.
In fact, before you begin a race, the game is already stacking the deck against you, as it selects two characters that will act as your steroid-infused rivals. Rival characters are coincidentally selected on the character select screen the moment you pick your racer, with rival pairings being somewhat based on who you pick. So Toad will never see Wario or Luigi as rivals, while Mario can, but
Ach so. Okay, also theoretisch berechnet das Spiel gar nicht alles dynamisch, sondern halt nur diese Rivalen, oder was? Und der Rest läuft einfach durch Wände, oder wie? What the fuck? Die Bots cheaten teilweise schon am MK8 Deluxe, weil die fahren teilweise auch zu schnell. Nintendo. Macht mir das Spiel nicht kaputt.
Toad will see Luigi and Wario. So why does the order matter? Not all rivals are created equal, and in this case, one will be the primary rival, with the other being the secondary. All other CPUs are generic, with no special abilities, so I'll be referring to them as Martys for the rest of the video.
Lol, was, Alter? Ja, so spart man Rechenleistung, Leute. Das nennt sich auf der anderen Seite auch Optimierung. Ich nenne es jetzt einfach mal Bescheißen, ne?
Both rivals are given special rubber banding abilities that increase their top speed and handling, allowing them to keep pace with the player. If we look at handling, the CPUs aren't programmed to do many turbos, the mechanic that lets players take tight corners and rewards them with a speed boost. The game instead lets rival characters take corners as tight as they want, with no penalty to speed. If this wasn't bad enough, if a rival isn't in a position to take a corner without hitting the wall, they will turn off collision and drive through.
Die fahren einfach durch die Wände. Warum? Weil die KI zu blöd ist, die richtig in die Kurven zu packen? Damit die wieder aufholen können, oder was?
The wall without any penalties, and on tracks like Toad's Turnpike, where there are moving hazards, things get even more weird. But we'll get to that in a bit. For now, let's focus on speed, which has 3 different maximums for rivals and Martys.
Wie jetzt 3 unterschiedliche. Ach so, dann gibt es auch noch unterschiedliche Geschwindigkeiten für den ausgewählten Rivalen und die restlichen NPCs. Mir noch nie aufgefallen. Nein, fällt dir auch nicht auf, aber ich glaube, das wird er gleich noch erzählen, warum.
If a rival is a certain distance behind you, they will use their maximum top speed. The exact value varies, but it's higher than the player's base maximum of 70, which
Deswegen sieht man keine Geschwindigkeit. Okay, also Spielerbasis ist 70 km/h, während der NPC bis zu 80 fahren kann. Sehe ich das jetzt
lets the
richtig?
rivals catch up to you fairly easily. When a rival overtakes a player, 2 things will happen. If they are in first or second, their maximum speed will be reduced, which allows you to catch up. But if they're further down in the pack, they'll keep their top speed until they reach first or second. Martys are even.
Sie behalten so lange das dabei? Alter, ist ja eine Schweinerei. Im Spiegelmodus fällt das besonders auf, weil der erste rast dann immer in erhöhter Geschwindigkeit davon.
even more interesting, as they will go top speed at all times. But if they get too close to the primary rival, another special ability kicks in. When a Marty approaches a primary rival, a speed reduction is forced upon them, capping their speed to a lower maximum, which prevents them from catching the rivals. You can see this in action by toggling the character placement UI, as the two rivals will be clearly ahead of the Martys, with no ground ever being gained on them. The only exception to the slowdown mechanic is when a Marty is near an area where they need to make a jump, as they will ignore the reduction and get up to speed so they don't fall in the hazards. The speed reduction aura is quite
Bescheißen ja überall. Das heißt, die werden wahrscheinlich auch kurz vor den Sprüngen nochmal Maximum Speed haben, damit die auf keinen Fall da runterfallen. Außer man hält die wahrscheinlich mit einem Panzer auf oder so.
quite powerful, but what happens if you interfere with a rival and force them to the back? If you harass the primary rival with items and put it into 8th place, the Martys will never hit the trigger that slows them down, so they will drive at top speed until the rival catches up and overtakes them, as the top speed for the rival is slightly higher than the top speed of the Martys. Another interesting cheat the rivals use
Ist ja so beschiss. Einfach, weil die Rivals dann immer noch ein bisschen schneller sind und damit dein Hauptfeind sind.
is matching your speed while using boost items. Here's the placement UI when using a star or mushroom. As you can see, the rivals keep pace no matter how fast you go. Since we are on the topic of items, this would have been a great transition, but there's one more thing we need to cover, and that's CPU pathing. Regardless of if a CPU is a rival or a Marty, they will get assigned to one of the 3 paths that are programmed into the track: left, middle, and right. Based upon where they start on the first track of a Grand Prix, their path will change, as each starting position will assign them to a specific path.
Ach, dann agieren die ja nicht mal dynamisch. Je nach Startposition bekommen die dann eine vorgewiesene Route, die sie einfach abfahren. Alter. Ich fühle mich betrogen. Aber Mario 64 war doch immer so, Mario Kart 64 war doch immer so toll. Aber klar, man muss ja Rechenleistung sparen. Aber trotzdem. Mann, das Nintendo 64 war doch immer so leistungsfähig.
Except on Yoshi Valley, where due to the branching paths of the track itself, the CPUs get assigned to one of 4 unique paths to navigate the course. So how does pathing help them cheat? On every track, the path assignments only serve to stop the CPUs from bumping into each other to avoid track congestion.
Ah, die können nicht mal ineinander fahren, Alter.
Except on Toad's Turnpike, where they break the pathing rule constantly. Toad's Turnpike is the only course with hazards that move around the track, as it's filled with vehicles. And rather than have the CPUs constantly crash into cars, the devs coded them to switch paths if a vehicle is detected in its lane. This is a good fix to avoid a cluster truck on the track, and on its own doesn't qualify as cheating, as they will still get launched if they collide with a vehicle, provided that they are on screen. If a
Ah, das habe ich mir fast gedacht. Jetzt kommen nämlich die Sachen, wenn die onscreen sind, dann wird natürlich die ganze Zeit diese, diese Illusion erschaffen, dass sie ein echtes Rennen fahren.
computer player is off screen, it gets another ability which puts it at Super Saiyan 3, where it's no longer affected by vehicle collision. This lets them stay on their current path and drive through cars, allowing rivals to catch up to you even
Alter.
faster. Other tracks have hazards as well, and using a special camera, we can see that while off screen, the CPUs will be affected by the rocks on Choco Mountain, the snowmen on Frapped Snowland, the egg on Yoshi Valley, and the plants on Mario and Royal Raceway. But there are exceptions. On Calamari Desert, the CPUs will ignore the train while off screen, along with the porcupines on Yoshi Valley. But the thwomps on Bowser's Castle are perhaps the most surprising, as while they will drive through the thwomps if
Das ist alles. Das ist nichts Neues, man bekommt das ganz gut mit während des Spielens, während die cheaten. Ich habe das nie mitbekommen. Nie. Nie.
they aren't on camera, they will still be flattened if they get squashed. Hazards aren't the only thing that have
Ach so, durchfahren können sie, aber erdrückt werden sie.
different off-screen behavior, which brings us to items, the CPU's ace in the hole when it comes to cheating. While on screen, the behavior from CPUs isn't incredibly different from what happens to a player when they're hit by an item.
Okay. Also das heißt, ganz normal hochgeschleudert werden.
So let's have a look. Red and green shells cause the same effect but to a different degree, with red shells sending anyone hit flying into the air with a tumble, while green shells do the same but with reduced height. If hit by a lightning bolt, the full shrinking animation plays for the CPUs, and if they're squished, the entire animation of them being flattened will play out. If a CPU is struck by a banana on camera,
Der redet so schnell, ich muss immer zwischendurch pausieren, um mitzukommen. Wenn ein CPU von einer Banane in der Kamera getroffen wird.
they will immediately stop and spin in place instead of sliding, while a player will spin out and slide for a small distance before coming to a stop. So while on screen, only the banana has a different behavior from what happens to a player, but off screen, things happen a lot differently.
Okay, jetzt kommt der Betrüger-Part. Schauen wir mal.
If we look at green shells, the off-screen behavior removes the height but keeps the tumble, resulting in a quicker recovery time. Red shells are a bit different, however.
Lol, Alter. Als ob die einfach nur kurz anhalten und weiterfahren können.
As the CPU will come to a complete stop, then resume racing with no tumble.
Wie ist das Spiel denn so einfach gewesen, wenn man das einfach normal gemacht hätte, in Anführungszeichen? Das kann doch nicht sein, oder? Das Spiel kann doch nicht so einfach sein dann.
Or height resulting from the hit. If you look at the progress UI, you can see this play out as well, as a character hit with a red shell on screen will have their portrait jump up and down, but if they're hit while off screen, the portrait will only make a little dip.
Lol, als wenn das sogar da dargestellt ist. Oh mein Gott. Ich habe das nie für voll genommen.
Then resume making progress on the track. The AI will also drive into the fake item box without trying to avoid it, and when struck on screen, they're sent straight into the air while tumbling. But if they collide with one off screen, they suffer the same effect as hitting a red shell. When it comes to the bolt, they still receive the shrink animation while off screen, but if they are flattened by another CPU or the player, they recover instantly, rather than playing out the full animation where they're flat and float to the ground. On Yoshi Valley, the bolt can also cause CPUs to fall off the track. If they're being observed, an invisible Lakitu will come and pick them up, but if they're off screen when this occurs, they
Als ob. Da musst du ja dann komplett die Strecke, also außerhalb der Kamera muss ja dann komplett auf einmal eine ebene Fläche sein, oder wie funktioniert sowas? Als wenn die einfach weiterfahren können. Lol.
float to the ground. On Yoshi Valley, the bolt can also cause CPUs to fall off the track. If they're being observed, an invisible Lakitu will come and pick them up, but if they're off screen when this occurs, they will immediately snap back to the track with minimal time loss. When it comes to the most famous item in Mario Kart, any racer hit by the blue shell will be sent flying with a tumble effect while on screen. But if you're in 8th place and use a blue shell, it will have the same effect as a red and bring any CPUs it hits to a stop.
Ach komm, selbst die Blue Shell, Alter.
Before they resume, rendering the most devastating item to the same status as a common red shell. Before we get to the banana, there are exceptions to the on-screen off-screen state, which are in sections where CPUs will likely be seen by the player from another area as they
Guck mal, die verschwinden ja sogar einfach mittendrin. Ich kann mir vorstellen, dass sie teilweise
the
dann
on-screen
einfach
off-screen
abgesetzt werden
state,
irgendwo
which
auf
are
der
in
Strecke.
sections where CPUs will likely be seen by the
Ups.
player from another area
Oder das ist einfach Level of Detail, aber
as the game has the CPUs behave as if they are always on screen. Almost all of these are near jumps, as Fraps Snowland, Wario Stadium, Royal Raceway, and Bowser's Castle all have ramp sections, and it's likely these were included in an attempt to stop players from seeing the CPUs cheat, as there's a chance they will be seen by the player when they should be off screen. There are additional areas like this, with the hairpin corner on Royal Raceway being a prime example, as the CPUs take full hits here even while off screen. It's not known why this area was coded this way, but it's a key component in the CPU-only shortcut, which means it's finally time to talk about the banana. The banana peel is the most powerful item for CPUs in
Okay, also immer schön Bananen aufsammeln. Das schwächste Item ist offensichtlich das effektivste gegen die CPUs.
The entire game, and its power lies in how they cheat when they're hit. As previously mentioned, the banana's on-screen behavior has CPUs stop and spin in place, but oddly enough, the off-screen behavior has them copy what happens to player characters when they're hit by a banana, as they'll slide and spin for a short distance. You might think that a sliding spin out doesn't count as cheating, but while in this state, they ignore collisions with walls as well, which unlocks
Nein.
their greatest power, the ability to do CPU-only shortcuts.
Das wird ja immer schlimmer.
In this clip, Yoshi has cleared the stairs and made it into the courtyard where disaster strikes. Wario
Habt ihr das gesehen? Da kam Mario einfach aus der Wand geflogen.
is cheating, but while in this state, they ignore collisions with walls as well, which unlocks their greatest power, the ability to do CPU-only shortcuts. In this clip, Yoshi has cleared the stairs and made it into the courtyard where disaster strikes. Wario flies out of the wall and slams into him. While CPUs can drive through walls, this only applies when they are cutting corners near the path they're on, and no path runs through the walls in the stairway section to the courtyard. The only conceivable way that Wario could have went through two walls was by another CPU laying a banana just before he arrived. This would cause him to slide since he's off screen, and due to CPUs ignoring collision while banana sliding, he slips through the two walls and slams into Yoshi. This is just a minor shortcut, however, as it only skips the stairs and courtyard for a 2-second time save, and it can be done by humans with the help of a mushroom and a technical understanding of how walls work. But I promised you a CPU-only shortcut, and for that, we need to head to Royal Raceway. On the hairpin before the jump, the track has a wall on the corner, so
Okay, da können nur die CPUs durch oder wahrscheinlich ein Bot für Speedrunning oder sowas.
you can't hop over the hill and skip the turn entirely. But if a computer player is struck by a banana at the right angle as they enter the hairpin, they will slide over the water or go through the wall, and then the fun begins. What happens next isn't understood very well, as there hasn't been much research into how Lackey 2 rescues CPUs, but after careening through the wall or out into the water, the computer will get teleported further down the track.
Was? Die bescheißen ja, wo es nur geht. Dann wird er ja vor dir teilweise abgesetzt.
In this clip, you can see Yoshi in first place, but suddenly his dot stops moving on the map, which is likely from hitting a banana and being sent out of bounds through the wall. You'll see his dot disappear and then reappear behind the finish line, with Yoshi now in first, having skipped the majority of the lap.
Alter, das ist ja fast die ganze Strecke, die halbe Strecke, die er da überboten hat. Weil, das weiß ich aus Mario Kart 64 noch, dass es auch gezählt hat, wenn du einfach hinter der Linie wieder aufgetaucht bist und nochmal durchgefahren bist, wurde das als Runde gezählt.
How far ahead the CPUs are warped appears to be random, and in some cases, they even get teleported to the finish line.
Ach,
Finish
komm.
line teleport glitches are known about, and they occur when Lackey 2 can't find a path marker to drop you on. In this case, world-famous runner Abney theorizes that the CPU became associated with a path marker that's mid-air on the jump. Lackey 2 can't put you down on a path marker in mid-air, so he looks for the last path marker you were associated with. But since the last place the game recognized you as being present was the mid-air jump, he fails to find a path marker. And
Aber ist ja krass, dass er denn trotzdem so eine Routine schon einprogrammiert hat, offensichtlich den beim letzten abzusetzen.
when this happens, he's instructed to place you at the finish line as a failsafe, which results in a shortcut that only CPUs can perform. All of this begs one question. Why make the CPUs cheat in the first place? For rival selection and speed buffs, the reason was to make the game competitive, as those features serve to keep you on your toes. But the item cheating features aren't necessarily for this reason alone. While it is true that CPUs can keep pace easier if they aren't receiving full damage from items, the reality is that the game was pushing the limits of the hardware, and if you've ever played 4-player mode, you've probably encountered lag. By reducing the amount of physics interactions that needed to be calculated for the CPUs, this lessened the load on the hardware and allowed players to have a lag-free experience. Well, most of the time. The developers really applied the observer effect from physics and created Schrodinger's AI, as their behavior is completely different once observed. But if you want to observe something cool in future videos, become a patron and see your name appear in the credits. And I hope to see you in the next exciting episode of Abysoft Z.
Puh, Leute, ey.
Rival characters are
Ich kann das Spiel nie wieder mit normalen Augen sehen, glaube ich. Ah. Das ist ja Beschiss. Also das heißt, theoretisch, wenn sie es übertrieben hätten mit dem Feature, könnten die sich auch einfach aussuchen, was die NPCs da machen. Leck mich am Arsch. Okay, Abisoft nennt sich der gute Mann. Lasst da gerne ein Abo da auf jeden Fall. Ey, super interessantes Video, aber auch ein bisschen traurig. Bis zum nächsten Video. Ciao.